The 6 hours passed too quickly. Captain Taiyang and his crew spent every minute preparing, organizing evidence, creating backup files, and sending encrypted transmissions to Earth. If something went wrong, if they were silenced before they could speak, at least humanity would know the truth. When the time came to return to the council chamber, Taiyang dressed carefully in his uniform. He checked every detail, making sure everything was perfect. This was not about vanity. This was about showing the council that humanity stood firm, stood proud, stood ready to face whatever came next. His crew walked with him through the corridors of Nexus Station. Ambassador Hana led the way, her diplomatic credentials allowing them access to the chamber. Guards watched them pass but made no move to stop them. The Memoria Stone's judgment had changed things. Humans were no longer prisoners. Not exactly. But they were not free either. Not yet. The council chamber was already full when they arrived. All 17 members had materialized in their holographic forms, larger than life, looking down from their positions around the circular space. The Memoria Stone stood silent in the center, its surface dark and still. But Taiyang could feel it watching, waiting. High Arbiter Thelon stood at the head of the council, his crystalline form solid and imposing. He had used the 6 hours well. He looked confident again, in control, ready to deliver the verdict he had spent the recess preparing. A verdict that would acknowledge the stone's testimony, but still maintain council authority. A carefully worded judgment that would let everyone save face. The council has deliberated, Thelon began, his voice echoing through the chamber. We have reviewed the Memoria Stone's testimony and verified its authenticity. The evidence suggests that Captain Taiyang and his crew acted in good faith, responding to what they believed was a genuine threat. Therefore, we have decided to— I don't accept your judgment, Taiyang said clearly. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the human standing alone in the center of the space. Thelon's holographic form flickered with surprise and anger. You dare interrupt this council? The High Arbiter demanded. I dare speak the truth, Taiyang replied. Something you seem very uncomfortable with, High Arbiter. Murmurs rippled through the council members. This was beyond protocol, beyond decorum. Humans were supposed to be grateful for whatever mercy the council offered. They were not supposed to challenge the ruling itself. Thelon's voice became ice. Captain, you test our patience. We have shown you mercy. We have accepted the stone's testimony despite our reservations. Do not throw away this opportunity. Opportunity? Taiyang smiled, but there was no humor in it. This isn't a trial about justice. This is a cover-up. And I'm done pretending otherwise, the chamber erupted. Council members shouted for Taiyang to be removed. Others demanded he be allowed to speak. Thelon raised his hands, trying to restore order, but his confident expression had cracked. Fear showed through again, bright and clear. Ambassador Hana stepped forward from the observation deck, using her diplomatic authority to project her voice across the chamber. The human delegation requests the right to present new evidence. Evidence relevant to this proceeding and to the security of the entire galaxy. We have heard enough evidence, Thelon snapped. The council has made its decision. Then unmake it, Taiyang said. Because what I'm about to show you changes everything. He gestured to Technical Officer Yuno, who activated the portable display unit. Data streams filled the air, visible to everyone in the chamber. Access logs, research files, communication records, all of it pulled from the Memoria Stone's database sweep. 6 months before the Vilnari infection began, Taiyang said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, someone accessed the council's archives on the rewrite plague. They downloaded classified information about precursor containment facilities. Then they visited 3 of those facilities and removed samples. The council members stared at the data, reading it, understanding it. The logs were clear and undeniable. 2 weeks before the Vilnari started showing symptoms, Taiyang continued, a ship was detected near the Corvin Belt. The same ship that had visited the precursor sites. The same ship that had downloaded information about the rewrite plague. That ship deliberately infected the Vilnari with an ancient biological weapon. He turned to face Thelon directly. Your ship, High Arbiter. You infected them. You created this crisis. And then you tried to blame humanity for cleaning up your mess. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted accusations. Some called Taiyang a liar. Others demanded explanations from Thelon. The High Arbiter's holographic form flickered wildly. shifting between transparent and solid as his emotional control failed. "These are lies," Theln roared. "Fabrications designed to deflect from humanity's crimes. I will not stand here and—" The Memoria Stone erupted with light again. This time it was not asking permission. It was not making a judgment. It was presenting evidence. The stone projected its own records, data it had pulled from every system connected to the Nexus Station network. And there, displayed for all to see, were Theln's files. His research notes. His experiment logs. His communications with Quarate scientists about weaponizing the rewrite plague. Evidence verified, the stone's ancient voice declared. High Arbiter Theln of Quarate Dominion. Guilty of precursor law violations. Illegal acquisition of restricted biological materials. Deliberate infection of sentient species. Conspiracy to conceal extinction-level threat. Judgment. Immediate removal from authority. Thelon's holographic form began to destabilize. His own government, watching from across the galaxy, was severing his connection to the Council. Abandoning him. Cutting him loose to protect themselves from the scandal. "You don't understand," Thelon said desperately, his voice distorting as his hologram flickered. "The Quarate Dominion is dying. We needed something to restore our position. The rewrite plague could have been controlled. Could have been used as a tool. The Vilnari were just a test. We were so close to—" His hologram vanished. The connection cut completely. Theln was gone, pulled back to his homeworld to face whatever judgment awaited him there. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. Finally, Kelrath, the being of pure thought energy, spoke. "What you have revealed today, Captain Taeyang, threatens the very foundation of this council. If one of our high arbiters could commit such crimes, what does that say about our ability to govern? About our judgment?" "It says you're imperfect," Taeyang replied. "Like every species. Like humanity. But the difference is that we don't pretend otherwise. We know we make mistakes. And when we do, we own them and try to do better." He looked around at the assembled council members, meeting each gaze steadily. "The rewrite plague is still out there. The Quarates found it once. Others might find it again. You can spend the next 1,000 years forming committees and debating protocols, or you can let the species that has already proven itself do what needs to be done." Ambassador Hana stepped forward to stand beside her captain. Earth formally proposes the creation of a joint task force dedicated to locating and neutralizing rewrite plague samples. We propose that humanity lead this effort. Given our experience in dealing with the threat, we request access to precursor sites, advanced technology, and the authority to act quickly when extinction-level threats are identified. You ask us to give humans weapons and authority across the galaxy. Forthan said slowly. "That is a tremendous amount of trust." "Yes," Taeyang agreed. "It is, and a week ago you wouldn't have given it. But now you've seen what happens when the Council moves too slowly. When politics matter more than survival. We're not asking you to make us your masters. We're asking you to let us be your guardians." The Council deliberated for 3 days. The debate was fierce. Some members trusted humanity's intentions. Others feared human power. But in the end, the evidence was too clear. The threat was too real, and the Memoria Stone's judgment was too powerful to ignore. The vote passed by a narrow margin. Humanity would be granted stewardship of the precursor defense protocols. Captain Taeyang was appointed director of the new Extinction Prevention Force. His crew would form the command structure. Mira as chief scientist, Chiho as head engineer, Sora as xenobiology lead, Dohyun as security chief, Yuno as technical director, and Ari as intelligence analyst. When the vote was announced, Taeyang felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. This was not a victory. This was a responsibility, one that might define humanity's place in the galaxy for centuries to come. As the council members began to disperse, Taeyang walked to the Memoria Stone one last time. He placed his hand on its smooth surface. It was cool to the touch, humming faintly with power that had outlasted empires. "Thank you," he whispered. The stone pulsed once, so briefly that he might have imagined it, but he chose to believe it was acknowledgement. A silent agreement between humanity and the ancient precursors. "We carried on your mission," he thought. "We finished what you started, and we'll keep finishing it for as long as we exist." In the observation deck, Hana watched her captain standing before the ancient monument. The trial that had begun as humanity's judgment had become humanity's commission. They had walked into the fire expecting to burn. Instead, they emerged as something new, guardians of the galaxy, defenders against the darkness. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Half the delegates were shouting at once, their holographic forms flickering and distorting with the intensity of their emotions. Some demanded Taeyang's immediate release. Others argued that the Memoria Stone could not be trusted after 10,000 years of silence. The noise was deafening. High Arbiter Theln raised his hands, trying to restore order. Silence. We must deliberate on these revelations. The council will recess for 6 hours while we review the stone's data and determine our verdict. Taeyang stood motionless in the center of the chaos. 6 hours of deliberation for something the Memoria Stone had already judged. He understood what was really happening. Theln needed time. Time to spin this, to control the narrative, to find a way to maintain his authority despite being proven wrong. Ambassador Hana appeared at Taeyang's side as security escorts arrived to take him back to his holding quarters. The guards were polite now, almost respectful, their earlier hostility replaced by uncertainty. Everything had changed with the stone's activation. 6 hours, Hana whispered as they walked. That gives us time. Time for what? Taeyang asked quietly. To find out what Theln is hiding. You saw it too, didn't you? The way he reacted. He knows something about the rewrite plague, something he doesn't want revealed. Taeyang nodded slowly. He had seen it. That flash of fear. But what could the High Arbiter possibly know about an ancient infection that had nearly destroyed the galaxy, unless it was not ancient anymore? Unless someone had found it again. Back in his quarters, Taeyang found his crew waiting for him. They had been released from confinement after the stone's testimony, though guards still watched the doors. Mira rushed forward and hugged him tightly. We heard everything, she said. The stone confirmed what we found. You were right, Captain, about all of it. Engineer Jiho was less emotional but equally relieved. The authentication codes checked out. I've been monitoring the Council's network. Half the delegates are trying to verify the stone's claims independently. The other half are in communication with their home governments. This is bigger than just your trial now. Xenobiologist Sora sat at the room's small terminal, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. I've been digging through the data the stone released. There's so much information. Molecular structures, historical records, technical specifications for detecting the rewrite plague. It's all real. Everything we found in the Vilnari neural crystals matches perfectly. Security Officer Do-hyun stood by the window, looking out at the Nexus Station's massive interior. Something's wrong, though. The stone said the infection was a deliberate introduction. Someone infected the Vilnari on purpose. That means someone found samples of the rewrite plague and weaponized it. The room fell silent. That was the question no one had asked yet. Where did the infection come from? The precursors had died fighting it 200,000 years ago. It should have been extinct. But it had returned, not through random mutation or natural occurrence, but through deliberate action. Someone had found it. Someone had used it, and someone had tried to cover it up by blaming humanity. A soft knock at the door made everyone turn. One of the guards opened it, and Technical Officer Yuno stepped inside. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from lack of sleep, but there was excitement in her expression. Captain, I need to show you something. I've been analyzing the Memoria Stone's activation sequence. The stone didn't just wake up on its own. It accessed the Nexus Station's entire database when it activated. Every file, every record, everything stored in this station for the past 1,000 years. She pulled out a portable display and projected a series of data streams into the air. The stone was searching for something specific, correlating information, looking for patterns, and it found something interesting. The data resolved into access logs, thousands of entries showing who had entered restricted areas of the station, who had accessed classified files, who had requested information about precursor sites. 6 months before the Vilnari infection began, Yuno continued, someone accessed the Council's archives on precursor xenobiology. They were looking for information about the rewrite plague specifically. They downloaded everything we had, including the locations of old precursor containment facilities. Taeyang felt his blood run cold. Who? Yuno zoomed in on one particular entry. The access code was clearly visible. The request came from a Quarite research vessel, authorized by High Arbiter Theln himself. The room exploded with voices. Everyone speaking at once, expressing shock and anger and disbelief. But Taeyang raised his hand and silence fell immediately. Are you certain? He asked quietly. The logs don't lie, Captain. Theln's vessel visited 3 precursor sites in the months leading up to the Vilnari infection. All 3 sites were flagged in ancient records as containment facilities for biological threats. And then, 2 weeks before the Vilnari started acting strange, Thelon's ship was detected near the Corvin Belt. Research specialist Ari, who had been silent until now, stood up from where she had been sitting in the corner. They were testing it. The Quarites found samples of the rewrite plague and they decided to weaponize it. They needed test subjects, so they chose the Vilnari. Remote location, contained population, easy to monitor. And when humanity stumbled onto their experiment and destroyed it, Hana added, they decided to use us as scapegoats, frame us for genocide while covering up their own crime. Jiho shook his head in disgust. That's why Theln pushed so hard for this trial. That's why he stripped your diplomatic immunity and refused to let Earth present a proper defense. He needed you convicted and executed before anyone could investigate too closely. Taeyang walked to the window and stared out at the stars. Everything made sense now. The rushed trial, the overwhelming evidence, the refusal to listen to humanity's side of the story. It had all been a cover-up from the beginning. The question is, Do-hyun said softly, what do we do about it? We can't just accuse a high arbiter of biological warfare without proof. And we can't access his ship's records without authorization from the council itself. Yuno smiled slightly. We don't need to access his ship. The Memoria Stone already did. When it connected to the station's network, it pulled data from everything connected to that network, including any vessels currently docked here, including Theln's personal research vessel. She pulled up more files. These were encrypted, heavily protected, but the stone had cracked them like they were children's codes. Inside were research logs, experiment protocols, communication records between Quaritch scientists discussing their progress in cultivating and controlling the rewrite plague. They thought they could control it, Ari whispered, reading through the files. They thought they could use it as a weapon against their enemies. Make it target specific species, turn entire civilizations into slaves. They were insane. They were desperate, Hana corrected. The Quarite Dominion has been losing influence in the Council for decades. Their economy is failing. Their colonies are in rebellion. They needed something to restore their power, and they found it in an ancient weapon that had destroyed an entire galactic civilization. Taeyang turned away from the window. His decision was made. We present this evidence to the Council when they reconvene. We show them what Thelon has done. We make sure everyone knows the truth. They'll try to silence us, Do-hyun warned. The moment we make these accusations, we become targets. Not just you, Captain, all of us. All of Earth. I know, Taeyang said quietly. But if we say nothing, Thelon walks free. The Quarites keep their samples of the rewrite plague. And someday, maybe tomorrow or maybe 100 years from now, they'll try again. Next time we might not catch it in time. Next time the galaxy might fall. Mira stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. Then we fight. We've come this far. Might as well finish it. One by one, the others nodded. They were with him. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Ambassador Hana checked her timepiece. 4 hours until the council reconvenes. We need to prepare our presentation. Make copies of everything. Send secure transmissions to Earth so this information survives even if we don't. And we need to be ready, Do-hyun added darkly. The moment we accuse Thelon, security will try to arrest us. We need an exit strategy. Taeyang looked around at his crew, these people who had followed him into the fire, who had helped him make the hardest choice of his life, who now stood ready to risk everything again for the truth. No exit strategy, he said firmly. We're not running. We're not hiding. We walk into that chamber and we tell the galaxy what the Quarites did. Let the council decide what justice looks like. But this time, we're not the ones on trial. This time, he thought, looking at the data files filled with evidence of conspiracy and biological warfare, the council would judge their own. The light from the Memoria Stone was not just bright. It was alive. It moved through the chamber like water, flowing around the council members, touching everything, reading everything. Data streams appeared in the air. Thousands of them, millions of them, files and records that no one had seen in ages beyond counting. Captain Taeyang stood frozen as the light washed over him. It was warm, but not uncomfortably so. It felt like being seen, really seen, down to his very thoughts. The stone was reading him, understanding him, judging him. But not with anger. With something else. Recognition, maybe. Or remembrance. High Arbiter. Thelon tried to speak, but his voice was lost in the sound that came from the stone. It was not quite speech. It was deeper than that, more fundamental. It was the sound of truth itself, vibrating through the air and through the bones of every being present. The holographic displays that filled the chamber began to organize themselves. Images appeared, sharp and clear despite their impossible age. They showed a galaxy teeming with life, hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, civilizations that rose and flourished under golden suns. But there was something else in those images, something that moved between the stars like a shadow. Ambassador Hana leaned forward in the observation deck, her breath caught in her throat. She recognized what she was seeing. It was history, real history. The story of the precursors, the ancient ones who had built the Nexus station and disappeared before any current species had even learned to make fire. The images shifted. Now they showed the precursors themselves. They were not one species but many, working together, building together. They had solved the problem of peace. 100 different forms of life, all cooperating, all thriving. It should have been paradise. Then the infection came. The holographic display showed the first outbreak. A small colony on the edge of precursor space. The beings there started acting strangely. They stopped communicating normally. They stopped responding to messages. When a rescue team arrived, they were attacked with overwhelming violence. The entire rescue fleet was destroyed. More colonies fell. Then whole systems. The infection spread like fire through dry grass, consuming everything in its path. The precursors studied it, fought it, tried to cure it. But the infection was too smart. It adapted to every cure they developed. It learned from every mistake they made, and it kept spreading. The Memoria Stone's voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language that should have been dead, but somehow everyone could understand. Rewrite plague identified threat. Classification. Extinction. Level. Origin unknown. Nature molecular reprogramming. Virus. Targets. All sentient neural structures. Adaptation rate. Geometric progression. The council members watched in horror as the images showed the fall of the precursor civilization. Species after species transformed into something else. Allies became enemies. Children turned on their parents. Whole worlds burned as the infected fought the uninfected. It was not a war. It was an apocalypse. Precursor response. 10,000 years of containment warfare. Losses. 763 species extinct. 12,000 worlds sterilized. Final status. Failure. Rewrite plague cannot be cured, can only be contained. Taeyang felt his stomach turn. 10,000 years of war. Billions upon billions dead, and they still lost. The holographic display showed the final days of the precursors. They were building something. Massive structures scattered across the galaxy. Not weapons. Something else. The Memoria Stones themselves. Final protocol initiated. Memoria Stones constructed as witnesses and wardens. Primary function. Record all sentient activity. Secondary function. Detect rewrite plague activation. Tertiary function. Authorize necessary response. The stone's light pulsed brighter, and new information flooded the chamber. Technical readouts. Molecular signatures. The exact structure of the rewrite plague down to the smallest component. And there buried in the data was a match. A perfect match to the infection that Sora had found in the Vilnari neural crystals. Rewrite plague detected in Sector Corvin 7. Date of detection. 91 standard days before extinction event infection vector. Deliberate introduction into Vilnari neural structures. Spread rate. Matches historical models. Threat level extinction event probability. 97.3%. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Even the background hum of the station's system seemed to stop. Every being present understood what they were hearing. The Vilnari infection was not something new. It was something ancient. Something the precursors had died fighting. And it had returned. High Arbiter Thelon's holographic form flickered wildly. This is impossible. The rewrite plague is a myth, a legend. There's no evidence. Evidence presented, the stone interrupted. Its voice carried no emotion, no judgment, just fact. Memoria Stone Theta 7. Recorded Vilnari infection. Analysis confirmed rewrite plague activation. Threat response authorized under Precursor Law Article Prime. More images appeared. These were from just months ago, human ships in the Corvin Belt. Mira's survey team detecting the strange energy readings, the attacks, the battles, Sora's discovery of the infection, and finally, the decision to burn everything. The stone's light focused on Taeyang like a spotlight. He felt its attention, its judgment, its understanding. When it spoke again, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Sterilization protocol fulfilled by species. Humanity. Methodology. Thermal destruction of all infected tissue. Result. Complete elimination of rewrite plague in Sector Corvin 7. Spread prevented. Galactic extinction avoided. The light shifted colors. From white to a pale blue that reminded Taeyang of Earth's sky. Judgment rendered under Precursor Law Article Prime. Survival of sentient life supersedes all other considerations. Species humanity acted in accordance with highest law. Action classified as necessary defense status authorized retroactively. Taeyang felt his knees weaken. The stone was not just confirming his story. It was vindicating him. Vindicating all of humanity. They had not committed murder. They had executed an ancient protocol, a law older than the Council itself. They had done exactly what the precursors designed someone, anyone, to do when the rewrite plague returned. The Council members stared at the stone, then at Taeyang, then back at the stone. The human stood alone in the center of the chamber, no longer looking like a criminal awaiting sentence. He looked like something else now, a guardian maybe, or a warrior who had fought a battle no one else even knew was happening. Kelrath, the being of pure thought energy, was the first to speak. Its voice was quiet, awed. The Memoria Stone has not activated in 10,000 years. Not once in all the time the Council has existed. We thought it was just a monument, a reminder of the past. It was never just a monument, Taeyang said softly. It was a warning. And a weapon. The precursors knew the plague might return. They built these stones to make sure someone would recognize it and act. We just happened to be the ones who stumbled into that role. High Arbiter Thelan's form had shrunk. He looked smaller now, less certain. Even so, the stone's activation could be a malfunction. It has been inactive for so long. Perhaps the human tampered with it somehow. We cannot simply accept. The stone pulsed once more and Thelan's voice cut off. When the light faded, new data filled the air. Authentication codes, verification sequences, technical readouts that proved beyond doubt that the stone's activation was genuine and its testimony was accurate. One of the Council members, a massive creature named Vorthan with 6 eyes and crystalline skin, turned its gaze to Thelan. The evidence is clear, High Arbiter. The stone's activation is authentic. Its judgment is valid. The human spoke truth. Truth, Thelan repeated, his voice hollow. Truth. But there was something in the way he said it. Something wrong. Taeyang caught it. A flicker of emotion that did not match the moment. Not relief that the galaxy had been saved. Not gratitude that humanity had acted. Something else. Fear. High Arbiter. Thelan was afraid. And Taeyang suddenly wondered why a quarried Arbiter would be afraid of the truth being revealed. Unless there was more truth still hidden. Unless Thelan knew something about the rewrite plague that he had not shared. In the observation deck, Ambassador Hana was thinking the same thing. She watched Thelan's holographic form, seeing the micro-expressions that others might miss. She had spent 30 years studying alien body language. She knew what guilt looked like. The trial was not over. The stone had revealed one truth, but there was another truth still waiting to be uncovered. And when it came out, Hana suspected the Council would never be the same again. The Memoria Stone stood in the exact center of the Council chamber. For 10,000 years it had remained silent and still, a witness to every judgment, every law, every decree. The ancient crystalline pillar was taller than 3 humans standing on each other's shoulders. Its surface was smooth and dark, covered in symbols that no living species could read, until now. Light pulsed through the stone's core, faint at first, then growing stronger. The symbols on its surface began to glow. Council members cried out in alarm. Some of their holographic forms flickered and destabilized. The chamber's systems were overwhelmed by whatever energy the stone was releasing. Then as suddenly as it began, the light faded. The normal illumination returned. The stone stood silent once more. But something had changed. Everyone in the chamber felt it, a presence that had not been there before. High Arbiter Thelon's voice shook slightly when he spoke. What was that? Taeyang stared at the stone, his heart pounding. He did not know what had just happened, but something told him it was important. Something told him the stone had just made a choice. Continue, Thelon ordered, trying to regain control of the proceedings. You are making absurd claims about infection and conspiracy. Present your evidence or accept your sentence. Taeyang pulled his eyes away from the Memoria stone and focused on the council again. He held up the data chip once more. Everything I'm about to tell you is documented here, but I'll explain it so you understand what humanity discovered. He walked slowly to the side of the chamber, where a holographic display could project his files. His movements were careful, deliberate. He inserted the chip and the air filled with images. This is the Vilnari colony we called Crystal Home. It was the oldest settlement in the Corvin Belt. 3 months before the attacks began, our survey team detected energy readings coming from deep inside the asteroid. The readings matched nothing in our databases. Nothing in yours either, as far as we could tell. The hologram showed scan results. Wave patterns that made no sense. Frequencies that should not exist in nature. Geologist Mira thought it might be an undiscovered element. She requested permission to investigate. The Vilnari had always allowed scientific surveys before. They were curious beings, eager to share knowledge. But this time was different. New images appeared. 2 small human survey ships approaching the asteroid. Then brilliant flashes of light, explosions, debris scattering into space. 47 people died in those attacks, Taeyang said quietly. We didn't even get close enough to scan the source of the energy readings. The Vilnari destroyed our ships from a distance and refused all communication. That's when we knew something was wrong. The Vilnari we had known for 30 years would never have done that. One of the council members, a being of pure thought energy named Kelrath, spoke up. Perhaps they were protecting something sacred. A holy site. Many species have such places. That's what we thought at first, Taeyang agreed. We backed off. We sent messages of apology. We offered compensation, we waited, and then the attack spread. The hologram changed again. Now it showed multiple incidents across the Corvin Belt. Vilnari vessels hunting human ships. Human stations under siege. The dates and times showed it all happening over weeks. They weren't defending territory anymore. They were hunting. Every human in the belt became a target. We evacuated civilian stations. We called for help from the council, but our messages went unanswered. We were alone, Thelon interrupted. The council receives thousands of messages daily. Your claims of emergency were filed and ignored, Taeyang said. We know, we checked afterward. An uncomfortable silence fell. Several council members shifted in their holographic forms. The accusation was clear, even if Taeyang did not state it directly. When humanity needed help, the council had done nothing. Engineer Jiho suggested we capture one of the attacking vessels. Taeyang continued. We needed to understand what had changed. What could make an entire species turn violent overnight? So we set a trap. We used one of our cargo ships as bait. The hologram showed the battle. It was quick and brutal. Human ships surrounded a lone Vilnari vessel and disabled it with electromagnetic pulses. They dragged the wreckage to a research station. That's where xenobiologist Sora made the discovery. She examined the Vilnari bodies inside the ship. At first, everything looked normal. But when she scanned their neural crystals at the molecular level, she found something impossible. The image zoomed in to show the crystalline structure of a Vilnari consciousness core. It was beautiful, like a 3-dimensional snowflake made of pure thought, but running through it were dark threads, patterns that should not have been there. This is an infection, Taeyang said, but not biological. This is something else. A program written at the molecular level. It was rewriting the Vilnari from the inside out, changing their thoughts, their behaviors, their very nature, and it was spreading. The council chamber erupted in voices. Impossible, fantasy, human lies trying to justify murder. But some members stayed silent, staring at the images with growing horror. Taeyang raised his voice. Security Officer Do-hyun ran projections. The infection doubled every 72 hours. If it spread beyond the Corvin Belt, it would reach other crystalline species within months. And the infection was adapting. Sora found evidence that it was learning to infect carbon-based neural structures. Within a year, maybe less, every species in the galaxy could be at risk. You're saying the Vilnari were a threat to all life? Kelrath asked slowly. I'm saying they were already dead, Taeyang replied. What remained was something else. Something that was using their bodies as a test, as a weapon, and if we did nothing, it would keep spreading until nothing was left but infected shells pretending to be alive. Thelan's form flickered rapidly, a sign of agitation in Koretz. Even if this were true, you should have contacted the council. Presented your findings, sought authorization for— There was no time, Taeyang interrupted. By the time we understood what we were facing, the infection had spread to 70% of the Vilnari population. In 2 more weeks it would be complete. In a month it would spread beyond the belt. We had to choose. Risk the galaxy on the hope that the council would believe us and act quickly, or make the hard choice ourselves. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member who would look back at him. We chose to save you, he said simply. We burned those asteroid fields. We used every weapon we had. We made sure nothing survived. We committed genocide to prevent extinction. And yes, we did it without asking permission, because by the time you finished debating, it would have been too late. The chamber fell into heavy silence. The weight of Taeyang's words pressed down on everyone. He was not asking for forgiveness. He was stating facts. Humanity had made a choice. They had killed billions to save trillions. High Arbiter Theln prepared to respond. His form solidified, growing larger, more imposing. Even if your tale has truth in it, you overstepped every law we have. You cannot simply decide which species lives and which dies. That is not how civilization works. That is not how— The Memoria Stone erupted with light. This time it was not a brief pulse. This time the light flooded the entire chamber, so bright that even the holographic council members had to shield their eyes. Data streams poured out of the stone, ancient files that had been sealed for millennia. And in a voice older than any living species, older than the council itself, the stone began to speak. The lights of the Nexus station burned cold and white. Captain Taeyang stood in the center of the judgment chamber alone. Around him, 17 massive holographic forms flickered into existence. They were the rulers of the Galactic Council, the oldest and most powerful species in known space. Each one looked down at him with eyes that held nothing but anger. Taeyang wore his dress uniform, the dark blue fabric pressed and perfect. His hands stayed at his sides. He did not move. He did not speak, not yet. Above his head, the domed ceiling showed the stars beyond, millions of them burning in the darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, his home, a world that might soon face the wrath of every species in the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. High Arbiter Theln materialized directly in front of Taeyang. The Quarriate was tall, his form shifting between solid and transparent like water. His voice echoed through the massive space. Captain Taeyang of Earth, you stand accused of genocide, the murder of an entire species. The Vilnari are extinct because of you, because of humanity. How do you plead? Taeyang said nothing. In the observation deck high above, Ambassador Hana gripped the railing. She wanted to shout, to object, to defend her captain, but the council had stripped her of that right. This was not a trial where Earth could present a defense. This was a sentencing. Everyone knew it. Theln raised one crystalline hand. A massive holographic display appeared in the air. Images flickered across it. Human mining ships entering the Corvin Belt. The asteroid fields where the Vilnari had lived for thousands of years. The crystalline beings had been beautiful once, their bodies catching and reflecting light like living diamonds. The evidence is clear, Theln continued. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which made it worse somehow. Human corporations wanted access to the mineral-rich asteroids. The Vilnari refused to leave. There were complaints filed, disputes over territory. Then your ships entered the belt. More images appeared. Human vessels moving between the asteroids. Dates and times stamped on each one. The surveillance was perfect, capturing everything. 3 weeks later, every Vilnari colony went silent. Not one survived. When our investigators arrived, they found only ash and melted stone. The asteroids themselves had been burned from the inside out. Temperatures hot enough to vaporize crystalline life. Temperatures that only human plasma mining equipment can generate. The other council members shifted in their holographic forms. Some looked sad. Others looked furious. None looked doubtful. They had already decided. Taeyang was guilty. Earth was guilty. All that remained was choosing the punishment. Taeyang finally moved. He lifted his head and met Thelon's eyes directly. The Quarite flinched slightly, surprised by the human's steady gaze. "Is that all?" Taiyang asked quietly. Thelon's form flickered with irritation. "All? You stand accused of destroying an entire sentient species. What more do you need to hear?" "I need to know if you're finished presenting your evidence. Because once you are, I would like to speak." Murmurs rippled through the council. The arrogance of this human. The disrespect. Thelon leaned forward, his massive holographic face filling Taiyang's vision. "You wish to speak? To defend the indefensible? Very well. The council in its mercy will allow you this courtesy, but know that your words will not save you." "The evidence is absolute." Taiyang nodded slowly. "I understand. I'm not here to deny what happened. The Vilnari are dead. Human ships were in the Corvin Belt. Everything you showed is true." Hana closed her eyes in the observation deck. What was he doing? Why was he confessing? "But," Taiyang continued, his voice growing stronger, "your perfect surveillance missed something." "It missed the truth." Thelon laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The truth? We have shown you the truth. You've shown me what your cameras captured, but cameras can't see everything. They can't see what happened 3 months before the extinction event." The chamber fell silent. Thelon's laughter died. "Explain." Taiyang took a breath. This was it. The moment everything either made sense or fell apart. 3 months before the Vilnari died, one of our survey teams detected unusual energy readings. Not from technology. Something older. Something that scared our scientists because it shouldn't have been there. Geologist Mira led a team to investigate. They approached the oldest Vilnari colony peacefully. They broadcast greetings in every language we knew. He paused and pain flickered across his face. The Vilnari destroyed 2 survey ships. 47 humans died in those attacks. We tried to contact them to ask what was wrong. They ignored every message. And then they started hunting us. Lies, Thelon said flatly. The Vilnari were peaceful. "They never—" "Check your own records," Taiyang interrupted. Human Outpost Delta 7 sent distress calls. Your listening stations would have picked them up. We were under attack for 2 months before we fought back. The council members looked at each other. One of them, a massive creature made of flowing energy, gestured. Data streams appeared in the air, files being searched and opened. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The energy being spoke, its voice like thunder. There are distress calls. From human vessels in the Corvin sector, dated as the human claims. Thelon's form flickered wildly. Distress calls prove nothing. Perhaps the humans provoked. "We recovered wreckage," Taiyang said. "From destroyed Vilnari ships. Our engineers and scientists studied them. Engineer Jiho and xenobiologist Sora made a discovery. The Vilnari neural crystals, the cores of their consciousness, had been altered, changed at the molecular level. Someone or something had infected them. The word hung in the air like poison. Infected. The Vilnari weren't attacking us," Taiyang said softly. "They were already dead. Whatever they had become, it wasn't them anymore. It was something else. Something that was spreading. And if we hadn't stopped it in the Corvin Belt, it would have spread to every corner of the galaxy." Thelon's voice was ice. "You expect us to believe this fantasy? That some mysterious infection justified the murder of billions?" "I expect you to look at the evidence," Taiyang replied. He pulled a data chip from his pocket and held it up. "Everything is here. The analysis. The projections. The impossible choice we had to make." High Arbiter Thelon stared at the small human standing before the might of the Galactic Council. For just a moment, doubt flickered across his features. Then his expression hardened again. "Even if your story were true," he said coldly, "you acted without authority. You appointed yourselves executioners. You—" The lights went out. The entire chamber plunged into darkness. Then slowly a new light began to grow. It came from the center of the room, from an object that had stood silent for 10,000 years. The Memoria Stone was waking up, and it had something to say.